detective.
Thrill me.
Thanks for joining us again for a kind of like a Thrill Me podcast side. We've been contacted by a group with regards to watching a movie in advance. The film is called In Fabric. It is a horror/comedy, I believe. And just to let everyone know, it actually does hit the cinemas on March the 12th in Australia. And we've obviously been given a chance to look at it beforehand and provide a hopefully spoiler-free review. So, without further ado, here is the trailer for In Fabric.
A purchase on a horizon?
I'm just looking, thank you.
The hesitation in your voice, soon to be an echo in the recesses of the spheres of retail. The dress is your image, onto what you project through an illusion.
I'm just going on a date. I don't normally wear this kind of thing.
Be bold. Your date will compliment you. I would like you to announce the numbers to your telephone.
01632 960 7
And 7
8 6.
and 6 and stop.
As promised,
Thank you.
you look different.
Oh my God, what's that? That looks nasty.
Maybe just the washing powder.
I hope it isn't catchy.
How's it going, Sheila?
Everything's fine.
What happened to your hand?
Washing machine went bananas.
You who wear me will know me.
What's that supposed to mean?
It's just a cheap bit of mystery.
I think something's wrong with that dress.
Don't tell me you're scared of a dress.
The dog ripped it to pieces.
It's brand spanking new almost. Such a pretty dress.
Anything nice in the sales?
Just a dress.
In Fabric. Actually, the film was from 2018. It's actually been out on the festival circuit and the like over the past year or two. It is written and directed by Peter Strickland, and it stars Sidney Babette Kurtzen as Jill, Marianne Jean Baptiste as Sheila, Julian Barrett as Stash, and Steve Oram as Clive. I don't have a lot of detail about budget or box office. According to the Internet Movie Database, its worldwide box office is $183,000. Doesn't actually say what the budget was, unfortunately. Alright, Jared. Keeping it spoiler free, how did you feel about In Fabric?
It was interesting, would be one way to describe it. It's very out there, very different. It looked great in parts, like it's very stylish. You sort of mentioned some of the Giallo horror films and things like that. It definitely has a bit of that vibe to it in terms of the way it's lit and some of the music and things like that are going on. So there was portions of it where I was pretty wrapped up, even though I was slightly baffled by some of the things that were going on.
Slightly?
I was pretty keen to follow it along and interested in what was going on, but then towards the back end there's a bit of a shift in what happens, and it sort of lost me a bit there. That's where it just things started to just go well over my head, and I just kind of lost what I was into here. Prior to that, I was interested to see where it was all heading, and so yeah, I'd probably still end up with a 3 because there was some parts of it that I really did enjoy. Some of the imagery and some of the as we said, the way the film looked, the music I really liked. But yeah, it sort of went off track at the end. I don't know how I would describe it. It wasn't really a horror flick to me. Yeah. I did get a lot more laughs than I was anticipating. There was some very funny sequences in there. So yeah, 3 for me.
Yeah, I'm a bit the same. I saw the Giallo influences. I saw the kind of playing with your mind type of style of something like a Hereditary or a It Follows. Something slightly different, not quite down the classic track of where you're going with what I assume it's meant to be horror, but it didn't really feel like that. It just feels like a very strange kind of, maybe even, let's say, thriller at the absolute highest end. I'm with you. I was kind of really hooked somewhat for the first hour. I think the first hour kind of takes you on a bit of a journey, and it's weird and it's strange and it's got all these things in it, but I was kind of kept thinking, where's this going? And I really wanted to see where it was going.
Yeah, and there's some mystery around the store that's involved that kind of keeps you interested in what's actually going on. We had some sort of ideas about that.
Yeah. But it then shifts and it doesn't really pick back up. Even though it's still using this dress, and just to let people know, the whole idea is that this dress has some sort of power over people and has an involvement in the crux of the plot. Even when that shifts to a sort of another protagonist, that stuff's kind of boring, and it just kind of loses momentum and never really gets it back, and it never really reconnects with the characters that I was kind of interested in.
Yeah.
Which is to its detriment, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I guess we've mentioned, we're more interested in sort of the classic kind of narrative. So when it was, a little bit mixed up from that was not going in the direction of things that we're necessarily interested in.
No.
But as you said, I was still in. I was still hooked. Even with the strange things that were going on, I was still interested on where this portion was going. And then when the shift takes place, that part of it just lost me. I didn't find it as interesting.
Yeah. Your rating for this film will depend on what your interest level is in this type of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Which is quite obtuse. It's not straight down the line. It's kind of got all sorts of interesting and weird tangents it's on, and that's really going to play into how well you enjoy it.
And a lot of people have loved it.
Yeah. I mean, the critics are raving. It's got 94% on Rotten Tomatoes for 140 reviews, so that's pretty damn high. For me, it just didn't quite get there. I gave it 2.5. I felt that there were moments where I really was intrigued, and I feel the film is really, really well made and really well shot, but it kind of falls away as it goes along. Alright, some likes. The main character is going through the classifieds to find a date, because the film's set in the 70s. I think the 70s. And she receives some correspondence from one of her dates that includes he's painted a portrait of himself in the nude while sitting on top of a horse.
Yeah, that was great. I did love that.
Immediate giggles. I'm thinking this guy would have killed in the age of Tinder.
Yes, absolutely.
So, off to a flyer, getting to more the generalised portions.
Yeah.
The film is very stylish.
Yeah.
And directed
definitely.
with a bit of flair. Like, it's certainly not straightforward. The plot mechanics are not straightforward either, but the film needs a kind of a weird dream-like quality to it, and it has that. And he does actually deliver that very well.
Yeah.
So the film looks great. It is really well shot and has an atmosphere that, as I said, the opening credits felt classic Giallo type of stuff.
Yeah.
That music, and then the way they sort of set it all. Yeah, they whip through the credits and everything.
Yeah.
Even the fact that it's set in the 70s.
Well, can I just ask a question? Is it set in the 70s?
I think so.
I don't think it is.
Well, there's no mobiles.
I'll tell you, I get the feeling
Weird
that it was
answering
like.
machines.
I get the feeling that it was like.
Clothing.
Well, this is the thing. What about her son's clothing?
Yeah.
I get the sense it was a bit like It Follows. It doesn't necessarily have a time setting, but it's heavily influenced by
that
time period.
Could be, because It Follows was very similar in that regard. It didn't show any mobiles or anything like that, did it?
Well, It Follows showed mobiles, but it was that clam sort of thing.
Yeah.
Some of the settings were purposely looked like 80s.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of, you couldn't really determine. I felt this was the same. I don't know, I might have missed something, but I looked at someone like her son and I'm like, I don't know, he doesn't look like he's dressed from the 70s. But again, the phone situation, the classifieds, all that sort of
the
looked
clothing
like
in most people's cases was very much old school.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
look
the
at something
son
like
was-
the bank. The bank looked like something out of the 70s, but then you got hints off the two blokes that were working there that they were dressed in more kind of modern.
Yeah, suits
Yeah, like,
and
I
stuff.
don't know. It was a little bit strange.
Yeah, and look, that adds to this kind of strangeness and this. Yeah, you're questioning where are we, what's going on,
Yeah, yeah.
and so you're constantly kind of spending that first hour trying to unravel things,
Yeah.
and that works in its favour.
Yep.
I think the music
was excellent.
Music was fantastic. Had a real, again, Jello vibe, but it also had synthesizer type of score to it.
I liked it again. I felt it shifted too when the kind of that shift that we're speaking about sort of happens at some point. It felt like the music did too, and I liked it early on. Was where I felt that was at its best.
Yeah. Now, bloke she's dating at one point named Adonis. Solid guy. Sounds like a magician.
We speculated that she must be on The Bachelor or something like.
Yeah. he turns up to dinner, proceeds to tell her that I've got half price on pudding.
We'll have to share one.
We'll have to share one. And look, this stuff's kind of funny.
It is.
This is where the film gets some laughs. It's not a super, like, crash jokes or anything like that you're laughing at. It's kind of a darker humour. But for the most part, that stuff works, that sort of humour.
Yeah, and the kind of the guy she's with is just a bozo. You're kind of laughing at the situation.
She says something about, you said something about liking to dance. Not tonight, I've I rolled an ankle, he says.
Yeah.
So that stuff kind of, it got laughs, which I didn't actually really expect.
Yeah.
Whenever anyone says to me black comedy, I just assume that's unfunny. Comedies that aren't funny.
Yeah, we made a comedy, and then when we find out no one's laughing at it, we say, "Hey, it's a black comedy." No, yeah, there was actually plenty of laughs. I was laughing at a number of things, and some of them came in the midst of like parts that seemed like they were supposed to be the horror elements and the scary parts.
Yeah.
But I think it was intentional. Like,
Yeah, I
it
think
was just
so.
sort of, there was parts where it was just going way over the top.
Like, for instance, the two blokes who bail up our protagonist at the bank and proceed to have this discussion about how, listen, we've spoken to the boss and your handshake is lacking some sincerity.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, okay.
Their conversation about sales technique and all that sort of stuff is
And they
very
hand
amusing.
over some sort of
a document.
The
cartoon.
It's written in a breezy manner and it's got a cartoon at the end. And then he starts going, if you cut down on your toilet breaks, you could save 400 minutes in a year. So those things, it kind of worked in spite of itself, because once again, all through that I didn't really know what was going on and I didn't know how to connect all these pieces.
No. Well, that was the same with me. I felt like the dress stuff and her situation, I thought we were getting elements of the fashion industry and consumerism and stuff like that, but then I sort of lost that as it went along. Those guys kind of fit into it in a way, but then they have some interactions with people later on that are a little bit different as well.
Yeah. So that stuff, it did work though, in a sense that it had humorous elements that actually did get laughs,
Yeah, it
rather
definitely
than
got laughs.
sort of being on the peripheral and then supposedly being funny but not.
Yeah.
I mean, again, the second guy she dates, Zach, he rocks up with pudding. 2-for-1 pudding coupons as well.
Spoil all the things. I thought this was supposed to be spoiler free.
Yeah, but those things, they worked out.
Yeah.
They actually worked out okay.
Yeah.
There was a couple of creepy images, a lot of them involving mannequins,
Yeah.
that I felt worked out really, really well. And that's probably where the horror element kind of played out at its most.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that kept the horror or supposed horror sort of coming forward. Like
Kept
it
you
would
on
dip,
edge.
yeah, it would dip down and you'd kind of go away from that.
Yeah, but
and then
we'd
it
come
would kind
back
of come
to
back.
it and sort of, yeah, it just felt like it was building up to something that maybe never quite got there.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was definitely some imagery there to do with the mannequins and whatnot that certainly certainly lent towards that direction. And again, it seems kind of influenced by those 70s sort of horror,
Yeah.
you know, giallo, a little bit of the British stuff as well. So
Look, they also make what I felt was an interesting choice to change perspectives.
yeah,
About halfway through.
it felt like it was going to. Initially, it felt like an interesting way of approaching it, and I was again like you when it first happened. Next 10 or 15 minutes, I'm thinking, okay, I can go with this. I'm
Where's this going? Because
Yeah.
it's totally off the track we had before, but it was still kind of intriguing in the early stages as to what that would become of it.
yeah, and they tied it together with some things that were going on. Like it wasn't just a complete leap to something totally different. They tied it together with some things that had been going on.
Yeah,
So yeah, initially I was all for it.
yeah. I didn't have any other key likes. I don't know if you had anything else.
No, I think you mentioned most of the stuff that I was keen on as we were watching it.
Yeah, and obviously trying to keep it spoiler free, we've got to keep out some of what
Yeah, I've
happened.
got to sort of not make mention of particular
Which
things.
probably, there'd be a lot. I think there'd be a few more likes in amongst
Yeah.
some of that.
Yep, definitely. Expand on things a little bit more.
Dislikes. Look, honestly, I didn't really know what was going on.
Yeah. I
And-
felt like we were on track early, but the longer it went on, the more I thought, "Yeah, I've lost it. I'm not sure what the journey that we're going on here."
Yeah,
And as you said, that's different tastes.
Yeah,
I think,
your-
of the particular films that
your enjoyment is going to be dependent upon whether you can understand it or
Yeah.
you can get something out of it.
I mean, you're getting comments here from, people that watch movies like Ghost in the Machine, so, it might be for you.
it could be. The thing about it is, do you read into it a certain way?
Yeah.
I didn't really read into it. I kind of got a bit like what you were saying, consumerism and our thirst to purchase and be a slave to kind of turning up and buying
slave
in
to
the
this
stores.
cycle of the fashion cycles and sales and all this sort of stuff.
But by the end of it, I'd kind of lost that.
Yeah, same.
I didn't really
By the
feel
end of it,
that.
I felt like, okay, I don't know whether there's a broader message or whether he's just looking to twist our minds here a little bit.
Yeah, and so that's going to affect how you feel about it. And for
Yeah.
me, it didn't work
Yeah.
because halfway through, I lose perspective or I lose interest because I don't really understand what's happening,
Yeah.
and then I can't pick it back up
Yeah.
because it didn't really come back up. That was the problem for me.
Yeah, there's one particular element of it that I would like. We could say I'd want some clarification on it. But yeah, it's not something we can really talk about without going too much into spoiler territory. So we might bring it up later on down the track sometime.
And look, I appreciated the cutting back and forth between. There was one sort of story happening here, and then we were going back to the store.
Mm.
But it also, I felt that they didn't really complement very well, in the sense of it was jarring to cut away from certain things and then go back there, and then I was just kind of like, okay, I'm just starting to get interested again. Then you cut away,
Yeah.
and I just felt that didn't hold.
Yep.
And even during the early part, it was somewhat frustrating because we were getting partial pieces, and then we were over here somewhere for a little while. So I was that was a bit put out.
Mm.
Now look, there is a sequence, so I don't know. I'm not going to go into depth on it, but it's a sequence. It's How was it? How did I say that it was mentioned in the ratings?
Debasing.
There's something like
something.
that. An act of debasement or something. I mean, I haven't quite got the understanding here. I'll see if I can rustle it up while we talk. But basically, this sequence involves some unsavoury sexual sort of stuff, but it's not normal. It's kind of weird what's going on. There's a strangeness to it, which is in keeping with the film, I guess, but it was very untidy.
Yeah. Yeah, for a moment I decided I didn't want to know what was happening in amongst the workings of the store. Yeah, it was a little bit confronting, you could say.
It was confronting because it was... Here we go. Okay, sorry. The film is rated R for strong sexual content, including a scene of abhorrent behaviour.
Okay, all right.
Right, sorry, I got that wrong. It was about debasing yourself.
Yeah.
But it's it's kind of, look, in the context of what I thought was going on, maybe it made some sense.
Yeah.
But...
Probably didn't need as... look... I could tell what was going on. I didn't really need to get in any closer to the action that was happening there.
Yeah,
we could probably leave something to the imagination.
Yeah,
given how much engagement with the film it took to get, little pieces of comprehension. You probably didn't need to be, that wasn't the point that I really needed to be made that clear.
And then, not long after that sequence, there is another one that's slightly... It's sexual based, but it's super weird.
Mm.
And I think, again, it's all going to come down to how you process the film.
Yeah, it's how you're reading it, whether that's part of the message. And initially, some of it I felt like, it's definitely part of the message that's being put out here. But,
Now, dialogue for me, talking in riddles, mate. Talking in riddles.
Yeah, some of them were.
The characters from the shop, I mean, it was almost like they thought that it was too smart for their own good.
Well, again, it was definitely on purpose.
Yes.
And this is where I got some of the fashion industry...
Yeah.
Like taking shots at the fashion industry and things like that. I could be well off track here, but that's what I was getting from it.
Quite possible.
And quite frankly, give me some space when I'm in the store.
Yeah.
I'm just browsing, thanks.
Look, I don't like that shit. I don't like to be followed around. If I'm in a store, I need space to pick my items. You know what? I'm going to come to you with those items for payment.
Can I be honest? If you walked into my store, I'd be telling the clerks, just follow that bloke around. He looks a bit shady. No, you're right though. I
want to walk in. I'm going to try some stuff on, and then I'm going to go to the counter.
Maybe that's why it didn't fully land, because I'm one of those people that if I'm in the store, I know what I'm there for. I don't need to talk to you.
Yeah.
Just let me get my stuff, and I'll meet you at the cash register. Yeah, their sales pitch was. It was heavy.
It was. Yeah, it was too heavy, and I think getting bogged down, as you say, it was done for a reason. What that reason is, I don't know.
Yeah, I lost it down the track.
But
I was second guessing myself.
Yeah.
Every idea I had, I was like, I don't know.
Yeah,
I'm following the thread, but I've lost it.
You don't want a bloke like me second guessing myself in a film. It needs to be straight down the line. So it felt a little bit too heavy. The dialogue was too much. There's one in particular involving the old guy in the store that I just was sitting there going, what are you talking about? Like,
yeah,
he's whispering stuff, and it's just like, I don't understand.
He was at his best when he was applying wrestling manoeuvres.
Yeah, put it this way, their loss prevention performance was absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
He had this lady in a bloody figure four leg lock. Like, someone was coming off the top rope at some point. But yeah, that was a little bit too much for me. Second half of the film, it just loses steam
Yeah.
because we switch perspectives, and that stuff's not as interesting.
No.
And I hate to say this, but I wanted to go back to the store.
Yeah. Same.
You know, even though I thought those characters were weird and I didn't really get what was happening, that
It felt like we were putting some pieces together.
yeah, and the
then it was
intrigue
just
around
gone.
them
Yeah.
and the mystery around them kept you kind of hooked. And when
Yeah.
they went away, I didn't really feel any mystery. I didn't really feel any attachment to the new people that we kind of got to meet.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just the second half just didn't kind of pull together very well.
No, I agree. It just felt like we were on track. We were just sort of gradually putting some pieces together, and when it shifted, it just felt like I don't know. It wasn't anywhere near as interesting for me as you said. That kind of mystery element is just completely gone. And then to boot, I just didn't get what was going on from that point. We've already mentioned it, but there's a particular thing that keeps going on with one of these characters that I just didn't get.
Yeah.
Basically,
Yeah.
you call me a dullard. I'll probably agree with you.
Yeah,
but
I am
I just
exactly
didn't
the
get it.
same.
I didn't
place.
get it.
I didn't understand any of that, and I still don't understand it.
No.
Even in the wrap up and the wash up of everything, I still don't understand why that was happening.
Yeah.
So, to me, filmmaking and script writing is about answering questions. Like, you got to answer the questions.
Yeah.
So when you finish a film, you should have tied it up.
I'm okay with being in the dark and working through some of that, but I just felt like this one didn't even really.
It didn't
I
even
don't even know
bother.
whether that was what it was wanting me to do, because it would just start throwing these images at us that. How did you put it? These psychedelic, it's kind of psychedelic images.
Psychedelic imagery that looked a bit like window liquor. Yeah, Aphex Twin was involved, obviously, but yeah, I just didn't quite. I didn't understand that shit at all,
Yeah,
and I guess I don't like to come away kind of going, you didn't wrap this up. You didn't tell me what this was, but. Is it a good thing that you come away with questions?
well, I think it can be.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I think it can be, and I think it's. I mean, there's a lot of films that I really like where I still go back and think, what about this or what about that? What does it all mean? What's going on? But this one, it was just sort of like I got to a point where I'm like, this isn't for me. I've missed it. I've missed something.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to sort of work out where it's going, but I feel like I'm just, as I said, pulling at loose threads. And
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like the questions are there at the end, but I just didn't care for the answers.
a little
At
bit,
the end of
yeah.
it. They filtered around in our head a little bit here, but now we'll probably just kind of go, right, that's the end of that. Rather than thinking about it, kind of like something like Hereditary, where I was still thinking about that like 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
Trying to work out,
And
how
I've
did
gone
it also
back
come
to answer
yeah.
questions, and
This
I
doesn't
think I've
feel
watched
like
that-
it had enough hold on
I
me.
think I've watched Hereditary 3 times now, and I still kind of go back to try and make sense of some of
This
the
didn't
things.
quite have its hooks in.
No.
So I wasn't fully hooked enough to really question some of that.
Yeah.
Look, I don't have any other dislikes. I actually have another like, strangely enough, just to recharge. The finale, whilst not making any sense, is never boring.
No.
Like, it is absolute madness going on in the last 15 minutes.
It is.
And I was kind of entertained by that. Like, I felt, oh, right, we're coming back around. And I kind of I perked up a little bit thinking we will get an explanation.
Yeah.
But I guess the counter and the dislike to that is the explanation I didn't understand, if there was one. So I'm still a little bit in the dark about that whole ending and how it wrapped things up. So it's kind of a little bit of back and forth on how, like, good and bad, about how you think about any of that.
Yeah.
I don't have any more dislikes.
No. That was I think we were pretty much in line with some of the stuff that we were liking and not liking so much about.
And
the
look,
movie.
again, each to their own.
I would say check it out.
I feel it's definitely worth looking at.
Yep.
In a sense of, I think there are going to be people who will scrutinise and go deeper into what it means, and I think they'll find something in there that.
You're talking people sort of, with a higher intellect than you and me.
I haven't had an IQ test done recently, but I'm going to assume it's fairly low.
Yeah. Look, I imagine it'd probably be one of those ones where you got a button and every time you press it, it electrocutes you, and they check how long it takes you to stop pressing the button.
So I think that there's something to be gained here.
Yeah.
And I would say to people, get out and check this out. It's not a horror film in the classic sense, but it does have some things that I feel will interest people, and your enjoyment level is going to be tempered by how deeply you're going to look at it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for me, it didn't quite get there enough. So that is In Fabric. Just remember, it hits cinemas in Australia on March 12th. Our next episode will be Moonraker, but until then, take it easy and we'll catch up with everyone later. Cheers.
Find the podcast at Podomatic or on iTunes. Don't forget to rate and review. Like us on Facebook at Thrill Me Podcast Australia, or contact us at thrillme, all one word, all lowercase, at iinet.net.au.